Well, welcome to Face to Face Live. You are going to be seeing so many more of these from my perspective, taping live interviews on Zoom, on different platforms, and then streaming them onto Facebook. Just trying to provide something more for my Patreon subscribers, but also for my listeners as well on Face to Face. And we thank you for listening. And don't forget to sign up for the newsletter if you haven't done that, or give us a thumbs up on YouTube, or maybe leave us a comment on iTunes. We would really appreciate that. Today we've got two special guests on, Robert Misovic and Noel Bass, talking about the Pendance Film Festival coming up very soon in the next 24 hours. So check it out online, pendancefilmfestival.ca, and about Noel's new film, the Bears on Pine Ridge. And it's a deeply moving film. It's an insightful piece talking about mental health issues and about suicide and about isolation and about friendship and community and hope, as Robert talks about in the interview, and about love. So and the rumor is that there are about 50 free tickets available for this screening. So if you want to get access to those, you can do that through the website, but you also can just reach out online, info@pendancefilmfestival.com, and you can get that address on the website as well, and see what else is coming up there. Interviews and panel discussions and a whole host of really important films that you're going to want to check out and at least become a little bit more aware of. So don't touch that dial, and please do give us a thumbs up, leave us a comment on iTunes. We would really appreciate that, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And thanks again for joining us today on Face to Face Live. April 16th is my next live planned interview called Collecting Courage. So join us for that. But we'll see you soon, and don't touch that dial. Welcome to Face Live. We're joined by two very special guests here with us today, and I was going to say one flying in all the way from New Mexico, but that's actually not what Noel is doing. Noel Bass and Robert Misovic are here today to talk about film and story and a festival that you are going to need to know a little bit more about. Noel, Robert, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So hey, let's start with New Mexico. Noel, what the heck are you doing in New Mexico? I want to tell my listeners before we even started, Noel took us for a little tour, and it looks pretty stunning where you're hanging out currently. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? And
yeah, sure. It's I'm usually a pretty private guy, and
you don't have to give away your location, Noel. It's
no, but it's not easy for me to share my personal life. But yeah, definitely. So I've been traveling full time in an RV since, well, actually before the pandemic started. I used to be a photographer for 15 years in Los Angeles, and I decided to, I guess you could say, change careers. And get into documentary filmmaking. But before I left, I started the Bears on Pine Ridge project. But before I get into all that, I'll show you guys where I'm at.
Oh, so, you're going to take us for a tour. Nice.
Yeah, if you'd like one, yeah.
yeah. Let's do it.
Well, this is my view right now. So this is a cool little place in New Mexico. I don't know if you can see that right now.
Oh yeah, totally.
But that's called Diablo Canyon, and people come here typically on the weekends to rock climb those big cliffs over there. But it is BLM land, which is, it's owned by the government, and they allow people to come and camp for, I think, a maximum of 14 days.
That's great.
And so, yeah, and this is actually kind of an anniversary. I'm here because this was the first spot I came to when the pandemic hit. I went back and was staying with family for a while. I was actually in Pine Ridge where the story takes place. But obviously the community there is very isolated, and I didn't want to be responsible by chance. Back then, a year ago, it was very COVID was still very unfamiliar, and so you didn't know if it was flying around the air, you didn't know who to give it to. And so I didn't want to be responsible for possibly giving it to an elder or someone on the reservation. So you know, they have a lot to protect there when it comes to their history and their language, and a lot of their culture. It's not, you know, it's the way they transfer history is by word of mouth still, because it's tied to your family and to
right. Rooted in storytelling of a different kind.
It is. It's very, very personal. They know. I don't know if you guys are aware of, you know, maybe you've done 23andMe or you know, ancestry.com, and you kind of have to search. Sorry about that. You kind of have to search for your background with them. They are well aware of their
right.
family tree, you know, from a young age. So
and it comes up in the film in a really, really interesting way as well. And I'd love to come back. Thanks for the quick tour. Love to come back to that. Robert, thanks for joining us as well. Tell us why you're a guest on Face to Face today, or at least why you think you're a guest on Face to Face today.
Why I think it's to talk about Noel's film. It's to talk about the Bears on the Pine Ridge, and to help drive people to go see this very important film, because as much as it is about a very specific reservation, it's a very universal topic. It brought me to tears 3 times while watching it. I'm not Aboriginal, and I don't live where this is happening. So it's very universal, the themes that are explored. And, you know, a filmmaker who was at Pendance 2 years ago, who had made a very, very compelling drama, 27-minute short, which before Noel's film was the longest short that had ever been selected to Pendance, that one.
Right.
And he got on stage and he said something that I'll never forget. He said, what's most personal is also most universal. And so when somebody actually cares about what they're doing, and they're doing it for the right reasons, they get a very different type of film, a very special type of film, because it takes a very special individual to earn the trust of people who are naturally very good at spotting bullshit. Do you know what I mean?
I do. Yeah, no, I love that idea of the personal story. The intimacy of one becomes applicable kind of to all. So
absolutely. You don't have to have gone through this to understand this story. So this is not a story for everyone in the world who's suffering from mental health issues or potential suicide or knows somebody. It's actually a universal thing that everybody needs to understand, because this problem exists because we don't understand, because we don't see the root cause, because we don't see the systemic problems at place. It's not an isolated situation. Yeah, poverty is playing a part and isolation is playing a part, yes, but there's a much larger overarching structure that is systemically designed for this to happen to certain segments of society. And I think this film points that out in a very easy to understand way.
Noel, Robert, absolutely. Noel, I love the film, and thankfully I've seen it, and it must have been difficult to make on a variety of levels, I would think. And as I'm learning, editing is not an easy task when it comes to representing people, you know, wisely and well. But just to Robert's point, I love what Tyra said near the end of the film, and you know, I don't know where, maybe we're going to give away some spoilers, maybe we're not, but I'm going to give one away right now. I want to be this person who everyone loves.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I mean, talk about bringing tears to your eyes, right? Isn't that where most of us are? Don't we, aren't we all longing for that sense of belonging, that inclusivity, that sense of being at home?
Yeah. That's you know, Robert mentioned that he cried 3 times. During the editing of this film, I've cried countless times. You know, and sometimes it's just a little bit of watering, and And then other times it's I've had to remove myself from the desk for a while.
Yeah, you got to step back from it. Is that, Noel? Is that empathy? Do you think, or is it just is it your sort of sense of injustice of this whole issue and this whole topic, or can you ever really put your finger on it?
Oh, well, yeah, this is very personal project for me. I mean, this is it started out with some curiosity about the tribe and about suicide. I had my own depression issues when I was in LA doing photography, and I don't want to go through all that, but um, I so I was very interested in psychology, and at that same time I had learned about Pine Ridge and the suicide issues that were going on with their youth. And so it was a shock because in California, where I was from, we had no knowledge of
Right.
Native American communities struggling. It was truly a shock. And to this day, you're not going to find many Californians or people in New York or any of the coasts in America or highly populated cities are going to know. They're not going to know a lot about these isolated reservations and what they're going through. But going back to what you said and to the point, that moment when Tyra says, you know, I want to be someone that everybody loves. This is my niece. So Tyra is someone who I've become very close with. And in the Lakota culture, and this is actually with a lot of indigenous cultures and also in the Latino culture, family is it's a thing that can be brought on without blood. It's almost out of respect. It's out of a mentorship sometimes, or maybe you're just helping a family so much you're just part of that community that they not necessarily adopt you, but they kind of take you in as family. And so Tyra calls me uncle. And so when I see, and I was editing the scene, it's personal because it's my niece. It's someone I care about so much. And the same thing with Tiny. She's my aunt. So so yeah, I've cried many times out of all the bears because this is very real. And I've spent so much time with them and in the community that they're truly family. And Pine Ridge itself, I consider a second home.
That's cool. To Robert's point about it being a personal story, you don't get much more intimate than that, it seems to me.
Yeah, but it's very real. What's going, this film, I just want to tell viewers what they can expect. You're going into a state of emergency crisis, a youth suicide crisis, where a community is living in fear because they don't know how to stop clusters of youth suicides. They're just kind of popping up. And so these communities, suicide is something that's kind of tough to talk about in general, but these communities are having multiple suicides sometimes in a month. So you're talking about I'll speak for my life. When I was a youth in high school, there were no suicides at my high school. And, some of my friends or peers or cousins in California maybe had one in their community. This is a situation where kids are going to school, leaving on Friday, wondering when they come back on Monday, right? Is someone going to be here? And I've had one of the teachers at one of the schools has told me that exact line verbatim, and he was very emotional. And he said, when I leave on Friday, I hope to see them on Monday.
Yeah, it's pretty sobering way to look at it. I thought you did a beautiful job, and congratulations, by the way, on the film. And I can't wait for people to see it. I saw a similar film not long ago, Connecting the Dots, and interestingly, I did a panel discussion. It's about youth suicide, global youth suicide. It was with the Ontario Council for International Cooperation, and so kind of your film and the synopsis of it certainly caught my eye. Robert, when you've been doing the festival now for a few years, when you look for film, what are you looking for in a film? Is it, and I love your shirt, by the way, hashtag story over everything. That's awesome. Nicely done. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. We look for stories that resonate. They're not all like Noel's film. They're not all talking about something that's real, but they're all touching on something that's real, if that makes sense. They're not all documentaries. Some of them are works of complete fiction. Some of them are animation. Some of them are thrillers. But I've watched too many films in my life that have nothing to take away from. No feeling, nothing changes in me. So if film doesn't change me, doesn't challenge me, doesn't affect me, doesn't offend me, if it doesn't stir me up, it doesn't get into Pendance. That's sort of our programming motto, is story over everything, is that, and the concept of story is so broadly applicable, right? The story, I'll tie our festival together with the documentary. The story of everything means the story you're telling yourself, right? So take yourself into the mind of a child who commits suicide. What's their story? Like, what is the story that's running in their head? If they're a child from a marginalized community, the story in my head in that moment is, I don't matter. I will face unforeseen barriers to succeed, even forget succeed, to even meet bare minimum. If my community that I come from and identify as part of that community, therefore I am in fact that community, if that community is floating at 80% poverty, then I am that. So I lived in government housing personally. There was often urine in the, I'll share something personal. I remember when I was 12 or 13 years old, we were living in government housing, and I had gone over to a few friends' houses to sleep over at their place. And then it came to my turn to ask them to come over to my house for a sleepover, which is something any normal child should be able to do with their friends, especially their best friends. And I was told in no uncertain terms that the place that I lived was not safe for them to spend a night at a sleepover. So in that moment, unless you are extremely strong-willed, you start to identify with the stigma that somebody that is not wealthy and is barely middle class will not spend a night at a place that I spend every night of my life. And I am that. So when even one person is willing to, and kids are mean. So if one person says you're trash, that actually aligns with everything you already think about yourself. Now ask yourself a question. If that was your story, how appealing is it to end your life? Probably very appealing, honestly, especially if it's around you, especially if people around you are doing it. So getting people to change their own story is a big part of Pendance's philosophy as well. I was talking with a friend yesterday who said this festival is one of the most important festivals in the world because it's saving people's souls. The story, because art saves.
It's a pretty great soundbite.
But it was genuine, which is the difference, right? It's not a soundbite. I mean, it may make a great soundbite, but I don't think it's
going to make a great soundbite. Yeah,
well,
for sure.
Yeah, but that's what my friend was saying, and she's an artist, and that's what she was saying. How many times has a film made you file for a divorce that was long overdue? How many times has a film provoked you, not directly, indirectly? It stirred something up inside of you, and so it's important that artists do this. Artists are important for that reason, not just to shine light on, action thrillers and sell things. And so with the, sort of homogenization of everything and sort of like I was telling my friend the other day, it's like an Instagram filter on all films, right? So independent film, I hate to say it, but mostly it's in independent films that you find this type of story, this type of personal story that's real and not pre-filtered and not helmed and cut by producers and directors to be marketable, and because that's what kills the soul of any work of art, is curating it and sorry, like polishing it up and trying to sell it. That's what creates. So when you can take something authentic and something that's personal from somebody and really then put it on a platform, there's a sense that 99% of all books read, 1% of all books published account for 99% of all books read. It's the same is true with film as well. A lot more people are going to watch Avengers than are going to watch Bears on Pine Ridge. But the Bears on Pine Ridge will save your soul a lot more than the Avengers. But there's no $1 billion budget pushing this film. So
no, I don't think, Noel, you didn't have $1 billion budget, did you? I don't think so. I'm not getting that sense. Although I have to say, your opening shot, the opening sequence, was stunning. It's gorgeous. The what appears to be the moon and what I thought were shooting stars, actually, when the image first hit the screen, which is, yeah, really beautiful. Robert, Pendance Film Festival.ca. Yes, that's the place where people can find out more about it. They can get tickets. And I'm pretty sure I've heard a pretty cool rumor that there are about 50 free tickets available for the showing of this actual film.
That is 100% true. You can email us and we will happily send you a ticket. If you're somebody who cannot afford a ticket, we offer this to you for free.
It's amazing. So good. So cool. So generous. Nicely done. Hey, Noel, when you're making a film like this, there's so many questions I want to ask you. I want to ask about, sort of what do you learn along the way? But when you step into it, I think what I heard when Robert was sort of chatting there a couple minutes ago was the independent filmmaker has a little more freedom, maybe in some respects. I remember interviewing a few documentarians at Hot Docs a few years ago, and they were talking about the corporate edit they had to do of a particular project. And I remember one filmmaker actually saying to me, David, it's no longer my film. And I'm getting goosebumps. I was kind of blown away by that. Right. And so I think one of the beautiful things of film festivals like Pendance and like this kind of thing, it provides I'd like to say a fairly unrestricted space for you as the artist, as the creator. Can you talk about that kind of freedom and what you were expecting as you stepped into filming, to making this film, telling the story?
Sure. Well, I think I'm gonna take that and maybe go a different route, just because it is a documentary, so it's a little bit different, where the story kind of shapes over time. So in this case, it's really about the relationship you're making to the community that is truly giving you the access to the story. But I think with every film, and I'll just speak for documentary, if we had a budget, if I was coming from NBC, ABC, or whatever, it would always be easier. It would always be easier to get. I'll give you one example. I'd been wanting to do a ride along with the officers there, who, without speaking for them directly, I know that they have a very, very tough job. They have a high turnover rate. Because they're a lot of times first people on a suicide call, right? And I don't want you to give the impression that there's just suicide calls every day, but at some months there are. In fact, there was one month where there was 66 in 1 month, so that's about 2 every day attempts.
Way too many, Noel. I mean, the opening quote in the film, what is it? I wrote it: "We simply cannot bear to lose any more of our children." Right? One is too many in a sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And also keep in mind, they feel like their children are sacred. In fact, they don't have there's no word for kid or children in Lakota. It's just sacred. Imagine that.
Wow.
Wakanja is how you say it. So they're literally saying sacred being. So losing a child is devastating to their DNA, just the years and years of however many generations going back of how they feel about children. But without going too far off your question, and I want to get back to the police ride along. It took me 2 years to secure a police ride along because I am not coming from ABC or CNN or something like that. So it's always
interesting.
Fill out this paper and we'll get back to you. And then the paper gets
right.
lost. And so, but I was very persistent with that. And obviously I had a lot of time. I spent a lot of time on the reservation. So, and I tried different angles, with different people that I know that knew the police chief. And at one point, a year in, the current police chief, I was about to get a ride along, and then they switched to a new police chief, and so it was like a whole start.
Oh man, you had to start over.
Yeah. But that's because the organizations like that, like the police security or the tribal council or the hospital systems, it's always going to be a little bit more difficult unless you're coming from, like I said, a big network with producers and money and that kind of thing. So it took time in that aspect, but you're definitely right. Being a lot of times just myself or myself and one other person, it allowed us a special intimacy. I think after I've been filming so long, some of the people that I love and who I'm friends or family with there just thought, oh, he's just that guy with a camera, he's never gonna make anything. And so that, gives you a certain amount of intimacy that you can capture things, and also gives you more time to build trust, and they see you're genuine, where your heart's coming from.
Hey, Noel, practically, how much time did you just spend hanging out with people versus actually camera on, right? Like getting to know them, actually leaning in and learning their story, right? Not just trying to capture their shot. I bet it was a lot of time.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're spot on with that. In fact, Tiny and Eileen, who are the main suicide prevention workers today, they now have like a small hamburger joint. And so if I were to go back right now, they'd have me like flipping burgers or fixing the milkshake machine or something.
Fixing the milkshake machine. Does it break down that often?
It does. It breaks down a lot. What was the question again? I wanted to.
You've answered about 6 different questions, which is fantastic. Okay. That's the way we do it here on Face to Face. That's fantastic. No, it's great. No, it was about that intimacy, that freedom, that access. Right?
Can I just say one more thing on that?
Yeah, of course.
One of from a filmmaker standpoint, one of the biggest, I guess you could say, tragedies or things you would just hope to cover about a lot of their culture. Beautiful spiritual community. The people that are actually, deeply ingrained in the spiritual ways, the Lakota way of life and the sweat lodge, and just a lot of the other ceremonies that I've had the pleasure and the honor to not be a part of, but to witness, to be invited to. They're so beautiful. And I've traveled different parts of the world. I've seen a lot of cultures. These Native American traditions and what they do to the people involved in the community are so special, but they don't allow cameras. And so it would be amazing to show that balance and to show how it heals. And I'm hoping to do that when, we're going to make eventually a feature length. We'll find some way to tie in a lot of the spiritual, cultural elements. But, there were so many times where I wanted to film just a special situation. You can't,
And you can't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. It's interesting. Stylistic choice. I guess I suppose you could do that through animation. I've certainly seen that done before in some of the film over the years. But maybe it's best to talk around it and to leave that for the viewer. I mean, I don't know. That's it's your story to step into. But that's a fascinating observation. I thought it was interesting that help me out here. I think it was Roger who said something was when he was talking about Wounded Knee, and he talked about how. our grandparents, we're connected psychologically, we're connected spiritually. And I mean, those are big notions of intergenerational trauma and or transgenerational trauma, I suppose. But I just found it interesting when you brought up the whole idea of the sweat lodge and the spiritual component, and that there isn't a word for kid, but sacred. I mean, that's a beautiful, I mean, that's a beautiful thing to just reflect on. So yeah, I mean, and for so many reasons. So thanks for that. Robert, there's a moment in the film where, and I can't remember, I think it might have been tiny, and there was help me out, Roger, but it was kind of a march, a candlelit vigil. Yeah. And somebody, I think it was Tiny, who said, you got to keep the flame going, Robert. I get the sense from you that you're very passionate. The Pendance Film Festival, I mean, that's what this is about for you, isn't it? You know, story over everything, keep the flame going, comes up in the break out of our, I don't know, counter narrative is what I'm thinking. Counter narrative.
I see it as very few people from my position where I started as a child ever make it out of that situation. Okay. So the lived experience of being the abused child or extremely living below the poverty line, all of the mental health stuff that I've experienced through my teens, there are a lot of people who don't make it out, including the kids in the film that didn't make it out, including a lot of people who become very bitter, including a lot of people who never find a platform or become very jaded and very closed off to the world. A lot of people have really helped, actually. Me, personally. I had a teacher in grade 6 who kept me after class every day in detention, Mrs. Johnson, on purpose to keep me from getting beatings at home. Okay. I had a teacher in grade 12 who basically motivated me to get my grades up and get straight A's and get into university. Every step of the way, I've had somebody who saw something in me and said, if this kid can just crawl through, he'll do something. Now, I've always believed that you don't know who people are until they find a platform, okay? There are a lot of people in this world who'd be very, very different people if you gave them a lot of money and a lot of power. I found it really ironic when people were, chastising Harvey Weinstein, right? Especially producers that I knew behind closed doors did very similar things and would do even worse things if they had that type of power. So I believe that from my heart, that I am not capable of politicking or corruption or anything of that nature. And so I know that if Pendance can become the type of film festival that has a national spotlight, that we would continue to use that national spotlight to spotlight films like this. The problem is you can't give someone something that you don't have. You can't give someone press if you don't have it. You can't give people an audience if you don't have it. You can't give people funding and support if you don't have it. You can't fly filmmakers in and get them on stage and talk about this thing. You can't get them on podcasts without a publicist who costs money. All of these things are important. And so our goal is to not become this type of washed out corporate film festival that every other film festival feels like. And I've talked to so many people about this, and there's going to be a lot of Pendance is going to be, about this year in the panels, just talking about this commodification model, which is so silly. My dream is that if Brad Pitt or someone like that ever does come to Pendance, that they'll be able to just chill out in the back row and we won't even tell people that they're there. Like that's right. I'm not even kidding. I know that sounds really crazy to a lot of people, and believe me, a lot of people don't think that way. But I know that the people who've become really great filmmakers, like a Martin Scorsese or someone like that, they don't need fame. That's not what they're after. They're not going to film festivals. I've talked to a lot of really great filmmakers, including people like Rob, for instance. They're not interested in that stuff. They're not interested in watching their film and taking pictures. They want to talk to the audience, number one. They want they want to deal with a festival that gets what they're trying to drive at. Great artists don't become great artists by accident. There's something actually sparking inside of them. So, you know, for instance, someone like Will Smith, okay, fine, today he's a big celebrity, right? But deep down, there's an artistic spirit to this man that if you got to know him personally, you would see that really he would love to be able to just go to a film festival and sit in the back with a hoodie on and not tell people he was there. Creating that type of community here, I think, and by the way, it has already worked.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you again. I think it speaks to Noel's film as well. This layer of relationship and community and intimacy, right? That sounds like to me some wonderful things you're talking about. Big question for you, Robert. What color is the carpet going to be? I mean, no red carpets. Is that what you're telling me?
Oh, there are red carpets, but I mean, this year there's no red carpet because
there's no red carpets this year, right?
But yeah, our red carpet has always been super chill. Actually, we got a nice little compliment at TIFF last year. We were at TIFF Bell Lightbox, and they said that our media banner,
right,
was the nicest media banner they'd ever seen in their lives. It's very clean, and do you know why it's the nicest? Because it doesn't have other logos.
Right.
It's very clean. It's just Pendance. So, you know, the minute you slap a coffee logo on that, it's going to start to look real, you know. And in our first year in 2017, we had an option, right? And apparently, these guys deal with a lot of film festivals, the people who are doing the publishing of the banner. So they gave us a pricing list of all the banners, the step and repeats. That's what I'm talking about. Those giant 8-foot by 10-foot, whatever things. And they gave us a list of options. There was like a $300 option and a $1,600 option. And they said, can we suggest the $300 option? You know, it's only good for 1 year, you know, because they're thinking like your first year film festival, you're probably never going to make it to a second year. And I said, give me the one that'll last 50 years.
Nice.
Because that's
forward thinking. Yeah.
No, and I swear to God that thing is pristine. It's sharp. It looks like it was published yesterday. It's the best quality banner we could ever have. And I promise you, 50 years from now, or well, now 46 years from now, it will still be at Pendance. It'll be like a nice little thing because that's what this is. It's like we care because we know that we're going to be around for a really long time. Come hell or high water, we're here to stay. And we're carving out our space and we're finding our artists. And, you know, we select the 23-year-old 3 years ago. That person gets greenlit for a feature. They're coming to us.
Yeah, it's cool. Robert, it sounds like community, right? And access you're talking about for these, which is so beautiful. It's wonderful.
It's a human thing, you know. Everyone here is human. You're treating people like humans. There's no like, you know, there's no arrogance about it. Do you know what I mean? Like there's no fakeness to it.
Sure.
Like we're not a status thing. Like elevating somebody else doesn't make you lower. Caring about somebody's film, like really caring about someone's film, like what we were having a conversation before Noel came on about the minute you ask somebody on a red carpet, have you ever been to our film festival before? You drop that person's importance because you should know that person's been at your film festival before. It's crazy to not know, right? So if you give people importance, the audience can really feel that importance, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it comes through. It goes to I think it goes to your comment about personal and universal. Absolutely. Noel, I think sadly we're going to have to wrap up here in a couple of minutes, guys. But Noel, the question for you is: are you going to be getting a picture with that banner in 46 years? That's what I want to know. Are you still going to be making films 46 years from now? What do you think?
That's a good question. I don't know, but
I don't know if it's that good of a question, but it popped up.
Yeah. But I will say that to answer that, I'm positive, 100% positive that banner will go probably 100 years because
Nice.
Pendance is the real deal.
It's cool.
And, yeah, I mean, just every element you can see. I'm meeting Robert's passion for the first time as well, and you know, but the way they communicate with the filmmakers and their message,
so good.
Yeah,
it's great.
So yeah, we're really
so
excited.
just before we wrap up, I do have another question I want to toss out to you both about the film, and it's called The Bears on Pine Ridge. There are again there's this rumor circulating about 50 free tickets. available for people. So please reach out, pendancefilmfestival.ca. Robert, is it info at? Is that the best place?
So you can reach us at info@pendancefilmfestival.com, not .ca. Very important. And just write in the subject heading bears, okay, and we'll address it. And
beautiful.
I don't care if you need 4 tickets or 5 tickets. Don't abuse it, but like, you know,
Right.
however many tickets you need, if you need them, we will issue them to you.
And Brad Pitt will be the last one to get a ticket, right?
There you go.
I think Brad can afford it.
He'll be on the will call list. Yeah, he'll be on the will call list.
I mean, okay, by the way, I don't want to make it sound like tickets are an extraordinary price. They're $3.99.
Very accessible.
We deliberately made all the documentaries at Pendance at $3.99. And by the way, there's also free panels. So if you are somebody who cannot, you know, go and buy a ticket, that's totally fine. That's not the only value at Pendance. There are 20 live Q&As and panels by some of the best, most important, you know, people in this industry, from festival programmers to filmmakers who've, you know, really, really elite filmmakers who've really made amazing work. And if you're really interested in what Noel has to say and more about the subject of Bears on Pine Ridge, you can check out his Q&A on Sunday. It will be starting at 12:45, so just after the screening. And we'll be going 30 minutes deep, you know, with him and me, and we're going to be talking to the team.
That's awesome. Tiny's going to be there too. That's fantastic. So good.
Hey, can I before
go ahead.
Yeah, there's one last thing I wanted to say. You know, as far as the theme of the film and what people can expect, I was starting out the talk trying to talk about that, but I tend to go all over the place. So, but one thing I want viewers to know is that this film touches on a group of teenagers who are suicide survivors, who are in a project called the Bear Program. And what they're doing is they're going out and essentially dressing in big, bright, colorful mascot outfits, to where they, you know, underneath some of them literally have scars or are still dealing with depression and ideations, but they put on these costumes and they perform in front of audiences, sometimes packed audiences full of kids. And they're getting that love by hugging these kids, and they're giving that love, and they're giving hope. And it's a really, really special program that Tiny has created. And so viewers are going to get a glimpse into this. And I like to think that the theme, even though we're talking about a very, very serious topic that's happening globally in Indigenous communities, the theme of this film, I feel, is about resiliency and hope. And you've seen a community go through different efforts to try and reach the children. And so I think people will walk away when you watch the film. Hopefully you're walking away with a good feeling that you're getting to see a project that is not only unique, but on the path doing something really special and good for the children.
It's good. It's so great.
I think it will actually help anyone who's in a community that is struggling to find some sense of hope that things can change if people are willing to start something, anything. Right. Hope it's infectious, right? So you have one person in a community who's willing to stand up to an issue and say, who wants to help? It makes everybody feel like a solution is on the horizon. Hope is very underrated. It's extremely underrated, especially when you feel hopeless. So people like Tiny can be an inspiration to community leaders, organizers. There are tons of people like that. You know, Pendance is currently being sponsored by a whole bunch of struggling businesses in Toronto, because that's what we wanted to do this year. We wanted to highlight businesses hit by the pandemic. And one of those businesses is literally devoted to helping people who are you know, at risk and are struggling to find food, and they're just delivering food, and they're volunteers. So these types of community-driven initiatives can really just be somebody's, you know, you never know when somebody is, I will say, you never know when somebody is on that day.
Mm.
That day, that one day, where one act of kindness will literally save them from doing something irreversible. And
it's a great, I love that. I love that. I'll spend, absolutely going to spend some more time on the site and check out the festival. Noel, just to riff a little on Robert's comment there, you need to be with them. Don't ever leave them alone, I think is Tiny's advice. I believe if somebody's on the edge, if somebody's suicidal, etc., asking those deeper questions. And for me, it was just I don't know, lots going on in this film for sure, and I look forward to the full feature. But for me, that was an important, not only takeaway, but an important piece of advice, just as a general rule, as a friend, as a community member, as a parent, but just to be present, right? In every day, how can we challenge ourselves to be that much more present? And I'm with you, Robert. Hope is infectious, and yeah, looking forward to hearing more about where the film's going to go. Thanks to you both for joining me today. I really appreciate it. We've been talking with Noel Boss and Robert Misovic about the new film, the Bears on Pine Ridge, but also the Pendance Film Festival. Wishing you both really well with it, and thanks again for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much, David.
Okay. Talk to you.